Hi, I'm Isabel and I'm still in Mexico, and apparently there's a lot of background noises here. So I'm very sorry for the quality of the audio in this video, but I hope you enjoyed the video.
Hi, welcome back to another book digestion. My name is Isabel, and today we're talking about a very famous memoir, which is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I don't really think I have to explain what this book is about or who this woman is, but here it goes. Becoming is the story of the ongoing process that it is the life of Michelle Obama. The structure of the book follows her upbringing. It's Southside Chicago with her strong, amazing family. And it's really the typical story about the parents who do everything for their kids' education. Her mother was always by her side, her brother was always protecting and taking care of her, and her father, even with his disability, never missed a day of work because he always supported his family. Michelle Obama in her book talks a big deal about education because she believes education is a grand platform that it can impulse you and take you wherever you want to go. She doesn't sugarcoat the struggles that go with living in a poor neighborhood into a poor family, but she always reminds the reader that it was education what helped her move upwards. Also very meaningful, she includes a lot of moments when there's inner doubt within her, even when she achieved all the success that she was shooting for, moments of inner doubt, unfulfilledness, and always the question that was salient to her, am I good enough? And that's a very difficult question for all of us. Are we good enough for the things we want? Are we good enough that we should stay where we are? Or can we shoot for something bigger? Always with that question in the back of her mind, she goes and looks for meaning and fulfillment. Even when it means that she's gonna have to go back to a not good salary, even when she's in a law firm, she realizes that she wants to do something else and that it is okay to change your life plan. So by the time that we get to meet Barack Obama in this book, we are already so in love with Michelle and the person that she is because she is us. And those questions that are so salient to everyone who tries to succeed in any field. But of course, we also get all that information about the experience as a marriage and how being a highly educated Black woman in the spotlight make her the target to multiple aggressions about her intellect, about her race, and about her gender. Always reminding her of the question, are you good enough? Should you be allowed to speak? Should we give you some space? And at the end of the day, the general feeling after reading this book is, yes, you are good enough. So let's go with my rating. I give it a 5 stars. Again, I know that you're probably gonna think that I'm not a serious reader at all because last video I also gave 5 stars to the other book. But hear me out. I have read a lot of memoirs in my life. It is a genre that I usually gravitate towards because I'm a chismosa and I love gossiping about crap. Also just because I feel like it's a very sweet spot, and I'll talk about that later. But I even took a class in college about nonfiction because of how much I like this types of narrative. And I feel like when rating memoirs, I try to be less critical about the plot. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna criticize and judge a book based on how a person lived. I mean, I make my own opinion, of course, but it's not gonna influence in the rating because it's not a fictional story. So I just try to base my rating in the mastery of the storytelling. Even if you don't like the Obamas or just Michelle in general, if you're not a Democrat, even if you're not from the United States, I don't think you could say that this book is badly written. Like Oscar Wilde said that there's not such thing as a bad book.
There are goodly written books and there are badly written books. That's it.
That's the two divisions. Even if your political opinions don't agree with them, this is not a bad book because it's not badly written. It is true that it's not very experimental as other memoirs sometimes tend to be, and it just follows past to present, starting with childhood, ending with the few last moments of Barack Obama as a president and a final reflection. But I am convinced that Michelle Obama knows her story and she knows that power within it. We also get to see that she often used her own story as a way to carry a political message. So she knows that part of her story is that it's simple and it's real and it's a story that millions of people live in the United States and in other countries. With her memoir, Michelle Obama takes ownership of her own story and gives us a very well written product. So you have a very moving story, a greatly written work, and it makes me cry. That's a 5-star book. Honestly, that's a 5-star book. But what is a memoir? As I said before, Becoming is a memoir. And a memoir is a little bit different from an autobiography, and that's why I think it's a sweet spot. Memoir comes from a French word that means memory. And this is why memoirs accept that they are limited, but also free from some ties that autobiographies usually have. Because the author is speaking their own memory, or maybe the memories around the people who got to live with them in those periods of time. And it is a fact that memories are unreliable. So when an autobiography is all about facts, a memoirs is all about experiences and memories. It's not that important to know how something happened 100%. A memoir and a memory, it's never gonna tell you how something happened 100%. As I said, autobiographies are about the facts without taking, but also sometimes they lack that polished glaze of meaning and personal bias. And memoirs are all about personal preference, and they usually can focus on just one period of time or the whole life, skipping parts like they don't want to talk about them. In a memoir, you can start when I was 22 years old, and no one cares because everyone already knows that you went to kindergarten. They don't need to know. And maybe if they do need to know, it's because something relevant happened. At the same time, memoirs can take the liberty of being biased, telling you the stories through their own eyes, being brutal. Also, they can be very reserved, and it's the author's, and the author has to decide if they're gonna give you some space to decide if someone was particularly bad to them, or they're gonna tell you this person bullied me. I believe memoirs are very important to incorporate into our regular readings because they are that sweet spot between fiction and nonfiction. Not because memory is unreliable, it means that memoirs are not true or they're not nonfiction. But very often they borrow some characteristics that make them more user-friendly to people who often read fiction. Readers who dedicate their life to fiction will know there is such a powerful energy that comes with fiction that often just fulfills every of your reading needs. But memoir can present those same appealing characteristics and satisfying characteristics that fiction have, and they are applied to nonfiction. So it's a very pleasurable read, but still based on true facts. And that makes a bridge for you to be more interested in nonfiction, because you can see that often it borrows from fictional techniques. And walking that bridge and walking towards autobiographies, essays, and critical works can only enrich your personal life and your critical thinking skills. Now, some of the elements that I found were difficult to point out without giving you spoilers, because if I just sit here and tell you the life of Michelle Obama, then I'm just doing the audiobook for you, or a super digestion when you actually don't want to read the book anymore. So I'm just gonna talk about some elements that I feel that were borrowed from fiction as a conscious effort to make this more of a pleasurable read. One that I noticed right away is this is a very round story. Non-fiction, real life in general, is usually not round, and it's mostly meaningless by the particle. And by that, I just mean that when you're living, you don't see foreshadows. Foreshadowing, themes, motifs are something of fiction. Unless you're a very superstitious person, you just live your life and you don't actually interconnect stories. It just happened and you keep going. But every bit that Michelle shares with us is important, and it comes back in later chapters and is retaken in some ways. For example, one of the first anecdotes that she shares is when she was a little girl and she was playing the piano. She has a recital. There is an anecdote there. And then we move on. But then there's a moment in her adulthood and she compares it to that moment when she was playing the piano. That's what I mean that it's round. Everything comes back and it closes itself, which is not necessarily something that happens in an autobiography. Every bit of your life doesn't have inherent meaning, and it usually doesn't come back to you at moments. But in this way of narration, she makes the decision of only sharing things that are going to be important later. But that doesn't mean that it's not true or organic. It's just that it's a master plan, very similar to one that an author would have with an outline of what this story is going to be like. In my other video about Fahrenheit 451, I gave you the 3-act structure. And not because it's a non-fictional story, it means it doesn't have a structure or things are not going to come back. So that's why it makes this an example of how fictional arcs and fictional techniques can be applied to non-fiction to make it more artistic, or just to make it more pleasurable. I mean, this is a tricky element that is not always in memoirs, but in that nonfiction class that I told you about, we often just discuss about how nonfiction and life in general just borrows from fiction. Another of those elements that I found that I didn't know how to name will be character development if we were talking about fiction. Something that we want as readers while reading fiction is a good character. And a good character often starts in one point and ends on the other one. And we want for this character to grow, to get better, to achieve its goals, or maybe we just see them go backwards and get worse, but at least there's some movement there. So we have character development and character underdevelopments in some cases. In this book, we experience a character development because we are with Michelle since she is a toddler, and then we are with her at the end of Barack's presidency. Michelle Obama as a young woman, Michelle Obama as the first lady, and as the author of the book, experiment constant changes and moments of realization, hence the title Becoming, and her final reflection about it. She's constantly becoming something else, and that process is what we are interested in. And that's what one of the reasons why we read memoirs about famous people or watch interviews or documentaries. We want to know how's the process of becoming something and ending in something else. Because our title is Becoming, we're doomed to find a lot of character development in Michelle. It's just that, well, in fiction we would just call it character development and a mastery of it by the author. We just have people growing and people becoming. That is usually central to memoirs. And so we have that. A vital part of memoirs, it's something that we're so used to see and demand in fiction because we as people become and grow and develop and underdevelop. So I wouldn't classify it as a fictional element or a non-fictional element. It's just an element that we all want and whatever. So like my final element that I want to talk about without giving you any spoilers, of course, is intention. And that really goes with the other points as well. That's why it's the last one. And it is that in fictional stories, each part included is part of a master plan. And this master plan is like the outline and the story that the author wants to create. All the pieces have to be there together without any plot hole for our protagonist to go to the end of the story. It doesn't happen all the time. We have plenty of fictional stories when there are a lot of plot holes, but that's the ideal. That's why I tell you that this goes with the roundness of the story. But with the knowledge that this is a non-fictional book, it can only point to the intention behind the writing of the book, not behind the living of the book. Because Michelle Obama didn't live her life saying, I'm gonna go to Princeton so I can write this really cool book after my husband, who I haven't met, finished being the president of the United States. She didn't live her life looking for the book, but she did look through her life with the intention to write a book. And I believe that intention and the public that Michelle Obama wants to reach is the young people. Those younger audiences that might be living troubling times are going to be so connected to the moments of struggle because they all scream belongingness. Those struggles seem to belong to her story in a way that accepts that calamity and harshness are a natural part of the journey for belonging and becoming something grandiose. With that being said, I'm just gonna stop trying to convince you to go read this book. And now I'm gonna tell you how I felt about reading this book. I cried a lot while reading, especially those first chapters about her young years, her schooling, injustices, racism, misogyny, and the question that is always in the back of her mind, it's always in the back of mine, am I good enough? And sometimes you tell yourself that you aren't. Like once Michelle went to a counselor in her school and she told her that she wasn't Princeton material. Like, what? That's one of those moments when you realize that you have to really look out for yourself and don't let the external voices govern your life. But it is very hard when you have the question polluting your headspace and telling yourself, oh, you're not good enough, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't try that. And especially when you just look different. I've personally been in spaces when there's only white males dominating the discourse and the language used is English and not my main language. And reading about someone else experiencing that and being able to overcome this, but showing you that it's not just like, I'm gonna believe in myself and everything's gonna be fine, and just I decided I fixed it. Yay.
That's not realistic at all.
It's a process for you to become a confident person. That's why becoming it's so important to me as a person. I didn't even care. Like I started reading this and I was like, I want to know how she met Barack Obama, how it was to be a first lady. At the first chapters, I didn't even care that she was gonna meet him. Of course, that when she met him and he was so great and amazing, I was just like rooting for them, like as if I was watching a rom-com. But at the same time, their relationship felt so real that it felt wrong to romanticize them, because she wasn't trying to. She was just saying, look, he's my husband and I have to share him with everyone, and I don't actually want him to be the president, but I just can't be that selfish because that's what he wants to do. It's so empowering in every aspect of your life. It's so empowering knowing that Michelle Obama understands almost every aspect of your life, and because she just has lived so much as a young person, it just makes you feel that maybe your life can also be round, that maybe you're struggling because it's part of your story, because it has to be part of your story, because it's gonna come back, because it's meaningful, because it's formative, and because it makes you the beautiful person you are. And that's why I love reading this book. I can't give it less than 5 stars. So that is all for me. I know that I've been dropping some, this is fiction, this is non-fiction, this is what a memoir is, more than focusing on the particular of the stories that I've been talking about in my videos. But it makes sense to me to see the book as part of the collective as well as the particular. So let me know if you like that. I can just stop. If you have a book that you want me to talk about or a topic, I could also just do more of the general, like my first video, maybe not a book digestion, or you have any suggestions that you want to see in this channel, you can always leave it down below. And I know that this is a super popular book and I'm late to the party, but in the case that you're even later than me, please go read it. Go pick it up. It's a very enjoyable, cozy reading, very quick, and I think you would like it. If you want to watch any more digestions, I have a playlist now, and you can just subscribe. Yes, maybe, no? Okay. Subscribe and like my video. All my social media accounts are linked down below. And thank you for all your support. I'll see you next week. Keep reading. Bye.